Prepare yourself for List Off, the gaming podcast where your hosts, Brian and Ryan, rank the things they love. 3, 2, 1, List Off!
Hey guys, we only realized after recording this episode that this is our episode 100, which is incredible. I can't believe we made it this far. Honestly, we wouldn't have done it without you guys and you guys tuning in every week and you make this worthwhile. Definitely mean that.
We did it, Ryan.
We did it.
I'm so happy.
It's incredible.
I think we should celebrate. And I think we have the perfect thing. Okay. And that is a giveaway. So from now until X date, which I will let you know.
I think it runs through July 6th.
July 6th.
Yeah, and the winner will be announced on the next episode.
That's right. Date. Okay, yeah. That sounds good. We are going to do a giveaway. So people need to get on the Twitter and they can see the tweet about everything I'm saying right now and get on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you hear this podcast and rate us. Mm-hmm. And if you send us a picture of that rating on either of those platforms and just put it on that tweet, we will enter you into the contest and we will be giving away 100 smackers on your choice of platform.
Right. So yes, it will be the pinned tweet on our Twitter profile, and that's at listoff_podcast on Twitter. All you have to do is leave us a rating on Spotify, and that gives you one entry. And that is literally just like, I want to hit this button and hit submit, and that'll get you in. And maybe you'll win the 100. Maybe you'll win the 100.
Yeah. Clarification: $100 on
not smackers,
not smackers.
Yeah.
Yes, clarification there, but also $100 to like Steam or Nintendo, gaming stuff, not just anything you want.
Exactly. Now you're playing with power, Nintendo power, because this week we discuss the top 5 Nintendo power issues. And with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Brian. But I would say we also have the authority on all things Nintendo Power, executive director of the Interactive Art Collection, senior producer at 2K Games, and owner of the Art of Nintendo Power Twitter account, Stephan Reese.
Hi.
Hi.
we were talking offline about how I'm like Daenerys Targaryen with all my titles. But yeah, that's me. Hi, I'm Stephan. Happy to be here.
How's it going, man?
Good,
thanks a ton for joining us again. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
So we'll go ahead and get right into our pre-flight checklist. We'll start with you, Stephan. Have you been playing anything this week?
I'm actually like 5 or 6 hours into I do a yearly playthrough of Chrono Trigger.
Nice.
So
I'm into that.
I have been working on that slowly. I don't have a ton of time. I say that I'm too busy making games to play them, and that's unfortunately too often the case. But yeah, so I've been playing through there's 2 games that I play through every year, and sometimes 3. Definitely Chrono Trigger, definitely Link to the Past, although that's short enough that sometimes I get more than one playthrough in. And then Earthbound is, if I have time, that's a little bit bigger, but
excellent.
Yeah. I don't play a ton of like modern stuff. I think Guardians of the Galaxy was the last one that I played. I was really happy with.
You liked it? Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Cannot say it's the best game that I've played in recent memory. Can say that it was the most fun I had with a game in recent memory.
I think that's a valid description of the game. Yeah, it's a
I also played Forbidden West. What am I talking about? I spent a lot of time on Horizon Zero Dawn or Forbidden West.
So you heard it here. Forbidden West, not as fun as Guardians of the Galaxy.
You know what? I'll say that, because I think I don't think it's a spoiler that the second game in the Horizon franchise is considerably larger than the first game, and maybe it's me being a single parent in their 40s with a full-time career, or maybe it is generally just genuinely bloated, but like it was just it was too much game. Like there is such a thing as too much game. Like, and I don't even remember which one, but one of the Uncharted games was like that for me too, where I was just like, okay, I'm ready to be done now.
Yeah.
That sounds like Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
4 was very long.
Yeah. So yeah. I generally will almost always side on the side of wanting a game experience that's very concise and clean, versus anything that's like meandering and bloated. So like I did every quest in Forbidden West for maybe the first third of the game, and then I was like so over leveled for content by that point that I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go critical path and knock this out, and I did, and I was fine. That's fine. It's fine.
Brian took a similar route through the game.
So I did main quest all the way, didn't really deviate at all, and I was under leveled, but I was still had no problem with combat or anything throughout. So yeah.
I will say I am a big fan of this kind of the modern trend now of having like story mode, where it's just like, and first of all, it's less offensive than calling it easy, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
but it's true. I really just like I want to know all the things, and then I want to get on to the next thing. It's not I'll just one quick story, like Witcher 3, all my friends were like so into Witcher 3 and just like, oh my god, you have to play this thing. And I got people who are familiar with the game, I got to like the griffin encounter where you have to like kill a griffin in a field, and like I did that, and it's like a few hours into the game, and then I'm like, all right, I know what this is. Like, and that's like I was on to the next thing. So
it's the same reason I think the same point I stopped playing The Witcher 3, actually, because it's like, yeah, this is a lot of systems. I'm not really feeling it right now. And there is something to be said about that concise experience. I have these moods where it's all I want is like something a little more passive and enjoy the story.
Like Heavenly Sword, it was the PS3 launch title. It was like the kind of God of War clone. Was one of my favorite game experiences of modern gaming. In that it was like 6 hours of just fucking badass. Like the whole time I'm like, I'm having a great time. And then it was done. And I'm like, that was great. That is exactly what I wanted to do for the last 6 hours. Yeah.
Sounds good. Cool. Yeah. I actually skipped that game, but I've heard very good things, and I don't think it did well or was received well at the time of release. Right. But it's kind of gained this cult following.
Maybe because it was 6 hours.
Right. Exactly. So how about you, Brian? What's your pre-flight checklist?
Yeah, so I've been diving in more to Rogue Legacy 2. That's about all I've played this week. I definitely echo everything Stephan has said. Horizon was my game that grabbed me for so long. It kept me from Elden Ring, as Ryan is very familiar with. But I'm feeling like I might need to get into that Demon Souls, just because it's a required game for me to play through per our agreement. But I think I'm ready. Elden Ring is man, it's a tough one for me. I really like it, but it's a lot of game. And I think I need that more linear path of Demon Souls right about now, just the way I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rogue Legacy 2 continues to be the one for me. And cool. I am still Steam Deckless, so I can't jump into that yet, but I am very much looking forward to that.
Well, every day you get closer to that Steam Deck.
I do. Yeah. Less than a month,
allegedly.
I'm sure.
Right. Of course.
Know. I am Q2, so any day now.
I don't blame you for feeling the way you do about Elden Ring. I was thirsty for Elden Ring, like my most anticipated game 2 years in a row. And even by the time I reached the end of it, I was like, okay, I loved it. I am glad I'm through with it. I now need very short experiences.
Sure.
So, of course, as my pre-flight checklist, I am playing a very short experience that was critically panned upon release because of its length, but has since gained a cult following. And I'm really, really enjoying it. It's the Order 1886. It's incredibly cinematic. I own a PS5. I've played a ton of modern games, but this game still has, it was in 2015 this was released, and it still has these moments that are just jaw-dropping visuals. It also handles, it's a really subtle thing, but it handles camera focus like a movie would. So even during gameplay, if it's focusing on you in the foreground, say you're hiding behind cover, everything in the background is out of focus as a camera would handle it. And it's that real subtle change that just draws you into the experience. It makes it feel like you are playing through something as epic as a film. And it's very deliberate. It's very linear, but I think that really plays to its benefit rather than, the negatives that it was receiving for those reasons.
Question.
Yeah.
How did you decide to, in 2022, dedicate a significant portion of time to a game that wasn't particularly well received and is 7 years old? The reason why I ask is because that doesn't strike me as like old enough that like you'd be like, oh, that's the retro catalog, let me pick through that. Like it's this weird middling time frame that like I couldn't tell you what else came out 7 years ago, right? Like
no, same. I couldn't either. No, it was just kind of something that was always living in the back of my mind as a game I wanted to play. I was looking forward to its release, and then it got panned and it kind of kept me away. And everybody says they don't pay attention to critics, but it does play a role in decision making when it comes to spending money. So I saw an opportunity. It was $10. I was looking for a shorter experience. I have since heard good things saying the game didn't deserve the hate it got. So I made the choice, pulled the trigger, $10. Can't really feel too bad about that if I don't enjoy it. And I'm glad I did. I am really, really enjoying it. And I'm very glad I made that decision.
Are you almost done with it? I mean, if it is a short experience.
I haven't had much time to play games lately. So I may be almost done. I think I'm about 5 hours in at this point. I've heard it's 6 to 8 hours. So I'm not sure if I'm almost through, but probably getting pretty close to it. Yeah,
sure.
Good God, 2015 was a hell of a year for games, because I was sitting here like, I don't know what else was out there. I wonder what the like Mario Maker and Star Wars Battlefront and Bloodborne and Metal Gear Solid 5 and Arkham Knight and Halo 5, and I was just like, Jesus Christ.
Right, that's a big year for sure.
Just Fallout 4.
I don't know if that made either of our lists when we did best years in gaming. I'm not sure.
Wow.
2015.
That's a bananas list right there.
It is pretty, but it's funny when you look at most years, it's like, wow, there were a lot of big hits. This
is going to be one of those years. We're in it right now. I feel like things are getting pushed, but
I feel like 2023 is going to be huge. Sure. 2022 is really big though. Really, really big. Definitely. So if that's all we've been playing for our pre-flight checklist, without further ado, I say we go ahead and get into our lists. All right. So once again, we are doing our top 5 Nintendo Power issues. And as always, we start with the guest. But before we do, I had a quick aside. I want to get this on record before we start our list. I found an issue of Nintendo Power that I think is the most Brian issue ever. And if it's on your list, I will say this is the one I'm talking about. Okay. But if it's not, then I'll just keep my opinions.
Do we win a prize?
No, I don't know. You get to find out what issue it is. I wish I had something prepared. Should have thought of that. So yeah, Stephan, if you want to go ahead and start us off, what is your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is volume 28. I have it right here. Super Mario World. This is just like I can't, a lot of times I will gravitate towards like cover art, that kind of thing. This one, this is just a piece of key art. This is not this. They use this everywhere, so it's nothing special from that regard. But it is not the first time by any means that we caught a glimpse of Super Mario World, but it's the first time that we got like the big reveal. Mm-hmm. And I just because this issue is so important for that reason, you'll see a couple issues that I will pull out where I'm just saying like, hey, this was like just a super important issue. I think it doesn't get much more important than Super Mario World. So
I would agree.
So that's my honorable mention. And it actually, and the poster in here is also great. It's the F-Zero poster by Art Nichols. Since we're doing video, I can show you.
Yeah, let's check that out.
This one.
That
very cool.
Very, very cool.
And Art Nichols was actually a Valiant artist.
Valiant Comics.
Yeah, and he also went on to do a few issues of Howard and Nestor for the magazine as well.
Oh, very cool history. Yeah, I knew we got the right guy for this episode.
That's it. Yeah.
I knew it.
I mean, there's some other great stuff in this issue too. I mean, like some cool coverage of Worm with some great art in it. But really, like you can't say anything more than Super Mario World, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's no Super Mario Brothers 3, but it's true. It's true.
Getting to my honorable mention, this is the one that I do have physical copy of, and I will show it here. And that is issue or volume 148. This is the one I'm in.
I knew.
I gotta have it on my list.
This is not the episode, the issue I was talking about. Just
of course not. But yeah, so of course.
Sorry, the issue that Brian is in is not the most Brian issue.
Well, no, believe it or not, there is one that is more Brian.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mario Kart Super Circuit, great game. It tickles my GBA fancy there for sure. I love my handhelds. But I got to pull up my artwork here.
Wow.
There's my Sonic Advance.
Look at that beauty.
There's my name. There we go.
Amazing.
They got the place wrong. It says Dayton Beach. No such place. Daytona is
the Daytona Beach.
Yeah, Daytona Beach. So that was weird, but yeah, great issue all around. Pretty timely here. We've got a Advance Wars contest. So, what do you get to win? Grand prize, original framed illustration of himself or herself as an Advance Wars character. So that's pretty cool. I like that.
Cool.
That's neat.
I wonder who won that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I love stuff like that. There was an issue, and I actually have the statue, but there was an issue where the kid got flown to Interplay to be sculpted as a clay fighter for Clay Fighters 64.
Wow.
And then 30 years later, I hit him up, and he's like, "Yeah, I still have that." I'm like, "Great, sell it to me."
That's awesome.
Wow. So cool. So cool.
Was that the Blockbuster exclusive game? Like
Yes.
It wasn't available any other way.
Well, there was a version of it. There was
Okay.
like the base game, and then there was the sculptor's cut.
I see.
Which was Blockbuster exclusive.
Okay.
Very cool. So my honorable mention, Stephan, you talk about a game that you play through every year in Chrono Trigger. There was a game that I played through every year for decades, and that game was the original Final Fantasy for the NES.
I was going to say Final Fight, and I was going to be like, bullshit.
Yes, that would be bullshit. But no, it's so my honorable mention is issue 14. It has a contest for the original Final Fantasy, and it has a breakthrough of the beginning levels of the game. And this was the first time I had seen Final Fantasy, and I just remember thinking of how epic it was in scope, even in just a few pages dedicated to it. They had the overview of the entire map and little bios for some of the characters involved. And then they actually gave you, as Nintendo Power does, they walked you through some of the individual levels and parts of that early game. And it was like, man, this is a game I have to experience. That was basically what sold it for me. On top of that, they have another game that I'm a huge fan of, and that is a preview for an upcoming title called Maniac Mansion, which I absolutely adore as well. Has Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, and also perhaps a bit of premonition, because it has a section dedicated to the NES title Mission Impossible on page 64 of the issue.
Oh,
wow. Mission Impossible came out for the Nintendo 64 as well, so you never know. Yeah.
Here's an anecdote for you, Ryan. This is just because I happen to have it by my feet. This is the original art for that contest.
Wow.
The chest that they used for the Final Fantasy contest.
Man, that's so cool.
Jeez.
Just casually gets it from a box.
It's in my 2-frame folder, which is very large, but I knew it was in there. So. All right. Me, huh?
It's you.
For my number 5 pick.
Yes.
So this is volume 31 for Metroid for the Game Boy. And you know what? It's funny because I am not honestly sure if this is traditional work or not. I have no idea who the artist is. And it kind of looks like it's CG. And there's other issues like around this time where they were like experimenting with digital. And of course, they're actually using like a screenshot for the background that it's laying on here. But this, so a couple of things that make this really cool. The contest in it was Star Wars, and it was to actually go to the Lucas archive and like tour the archive and see all the props and like there's a follow-up article and a couple issues later here that actually talks about the kid who got to go there, and it shows him like wearing the Captain EO jacket. Like
nice.
He just got to like do whatever he wanted at Lucasfilm, and that seems super, super cool. The other thing that I think is really, really awesome about this issue is that it has the custom Game Boy contest, or the winners for the custom Game Boy contest. So I want to say it's 28 or 29, they had a contest where they gave you like a template of a blank Game Boy, like just an outline of a Game Boy, and kids drew their like dream Game Boys and then sent them in, and the results for that contest are in this issue.
Whoa.
Wow.
And like I thought it was just I gravitate often to just like really cool like user generated content. In a couple of issues you'll see another one that's a favorite of mine, but I just love when like the kids, presumably kids, really got to like shine. And so I love this issue for that as well. Also, this issue has a Super NES showcase that's really early, so you're seeing like a lot of the earlier launch titles. Like they have like here's Pilot Wings, right? As you know, Super NES showcase the next generation of gaming. And as Super Nintendo is my favorite console of all time, I think that's super important as well. So yeah, I love this issue all around. I'm curious. No, I don't think I'll ever be able to find the cover because I'm not sure if it's real or not.
Right. So how often does that happen? I mean, it seems like there were a lot of issues where the cover artist was unknown, right? Is that just more fact or fable?
Sure. Fortunately, for me and for us, the vast majority of the physical covers were painted by one of two artists, Dan McGowan and David Harto. And I have almost all of their work for both of those issues. So I have over 50% of the physical covers for the magazine. But yeah, a lot of times it is a shot in the dark, and sometimes it's been, and I also have a lot of I think you guys were talking about it in another, you were talking about me in another episode.
I know, is that weird?
Which I listened to while I was walking the dog. So thank you very much. But I do have a lot of like the physical covers, and most of those were done by, so like there was a glut of covers done by specific artists. So like that, the guy who did a lot of the physical covers was the same artist, and if not the same artist, the same agency. And it was similarly for a lot of the physical covers, they all were contracted through a single agency, Griffiths Advertising, which, to your point, makes it really annoying to find people because they were only really ever credited as Griffiths Advertising, except for issue 1. And a couple of the first issues where Dan McGowan was mentioned by name. But yeah, it's a labor of love finding people, and normally it's just sort of like a networking thing, right? I find some, with the Griffiths Advertising stuff, it was a matter of finding anyone who worked for the company. That was my goal. I just need to find a name, anyone who worked for the company, and then go into them and say, hey, just like casually talk to me about your time there. And as they talk to me, names would just pop into their head, and I'd write those down. And
that's cool.
So, and I left that conversation with a series of names, and then I said, okay, how many of these people can I find? And even those people were not artists, but eventually I worked my way back to finding artists, and then those artists tend to know other artists. So once you cross that threshold from editors to artists, you tend to find more artists.
Right. And I would also urge everybody to go check out Stephan's Twitter page, The Art of Nintendo Power, because you have a pinned video of some of your collection. I think it has that Dr. Wily vehicle that I spoke about in that episode, and I think that's when we brought you up. And so many cool pieces in that video, and on your page in general. It's really a trip down memory lane, man.
Yeah, it's also my personal page, so you do have to kind of sift through me like talking about my kid a lot. But yeah, I do post just about everything I find there. Like today, I posted I found the name plaque for from Howard Phillips' desk.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's the newest acquisition. So it's not just, I don't just collect the art. It's also other like rare or important, really kind of erring on the side of important artifacts from video game history. So, but yeah, that's all on Twitter. That's a good place to find me.
Awesome. So my next one, my number 5, actually is volume 28 as well. And I think, the thing that strikes me is that cover for sure. It was not one of my top 10 covers, but looking through the issue itself, this is one of those first times that we're seeing Super Nintendo stuff. And that was what I was hungry for at the time. And then the Super Mario World article, it goes on for 8 pages or so. Yeah, and it's those beautiful illustrations that, a lot of them are the ones that are shared in the instruction booklet. But it's that full cover, full, beautiful color everywhere that we love of Super Mario World, and seeing these maps and seeing actual the worlds just illustrated here. It's what I loved about Tunic. It's the same kind of illustrations that we get. It's just this whole world opens up in front of you, and it's those times that we looked at instruction booklets, but just this is like 3 times as big because it's a actual magazine. Other couple cool things. Star Wars is in here. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of the side-scrolling games, so we get these full maps where it's just all the way blown out, and you can see the entire map, which is just kind of unthinkable to imagine that Super Nintendo displaying the whole thing. Just wild stuff.
All the little key items would be circled, right? And I remember that. Yeah,
all those maps, by the way, I don't know if people know that they just photographed the screen and pasted them together. That's why anytime it's super obvious in the Mega Man maps, because every inch or so you'll see Mega Man hanging out somewhere.
Oh right,
because they were literally just taking photographs of CRTs and pasting them together.
That's pretty funny. They couldn't have timed their photograph for the instance where Mega Man's flashing off screen, because that happens in Mega Man games a lot.
Sure, I think it was more of a issue of a combination of not caring,
right,
and having
deadline,
insane deadlines.
Yeah, for sure. Good pick, though. Good pick. So moving on to my number 5, much to the chagrin of Stephan, I'm sure, it's a CGI cover.
Oh God!
And it's issue number 85. This was the issue that sold me on buying a Nintendo 64 in the upcoming console war that was to be the N64 versus the first gen PlayStation, because this was it. This had the first look at Mario 64, a big art. I don't know. Was it the first look? It was a big premiere part of the issue was that Mario 64 spread. I had an interview with some developers from Rare, which I don't believe was owned by Nintendo at the time. No. And then, just filled with upcoming N64 projects.
What's the cover of this one? I can't remember.
It's Mario. He's kind of in a ditch sliding.
It's bouncing on his ass or something.
Yeah, it's a little odd looking for sure. But it was really just seeing the graphics that were coming our way in the Nintendo 64 and knowing what was in store. And it did a good job of selling that console, because like I said, this was the one that sold me on it. And honestly, I didn't look back after this till years later, and I was like, where are all the games, Nintendo? Where are all these games you promised me in issue number 85?
I've been had.
Yeah. It wasn't that, I'd have to say that console generation wasn't necessarily their shining moment, but it has some stellar entries in a few series.
Yeah. number 4?
Yes.
Right here. This is, let me get the issue number right, volume 32, Super Castlevania 4. This is, let me just start with the cover because you can actually see it. It's right behind me. That big giant black square is actually the cover for Super Castlevania 4 here. The only oil painting ever painted for the magazine.
Wow.
So that's cool. The artist's name is Phil Howe. He is a fine artist generally. And fun fact, he doesn't really particularly care for this cover
Wow.
because he had to repaint it. So when he turned this in, the original shot had him more draping. Sorry, I'm doing this backwards. It's draping like to where the Super Castlevania letterhead is here. So his legs were actually swooping through where this area here is. And so he had to repaint the bottom half of Summon Belmont, which you can't see because they intentionally put the like seal of quality down there to cover how awkward his foot is. And also his 2 arms are not like proportionally sized. It's also lit really crazy. He's like lit in 5 directions. But so yeah, he does not care for this painting. Oh. But I'm
sure that worked to your benefit though, right?
It certainly did. He wanted it out of his house. But some really, really important things here. Particularly like this is when the magazine really started to branch out into more than just like, oh, we're just going to like show you the game. This was the issue when both the Link to the Past and the Super Mario Brothers Adventures comics started. So they both started in this issue, which also makes it significantly larger than a lot of the issues. But that was just like, okay, this is the new norm. Now we're going to do comics. Now we're going to do all these things. So like this was really a departure for the magazine. Also, Ryan, you'll probably like this. The contest was a trip to Rare. So there's that as well. But yeah, I think I'm not sure. I don't know if this is the first coverage of it, but it was like the first significant coverage of the Link to the Past game. So I mean that's kind of a big deal. It's a game you may have heard of. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a great issue. This is also one of those issues where I have like a very personal memory of like pulling it out of the mailbox.
Right.
And I think everybody, the Darkwing Duck cover is actually didn't make my list, but is one of those as well.
Sure.
You have the artwork from that, don't you?
I do. Yeah.
So can I ask how many Nintendo Powers of your collection that you currently have are ones that you originally had?
0.
Oh man,
none of them.
Okay.
They did sit in the back of my closet until I was about 14, and then
Gotcha.
I was just like too cool for it.
Right.
I feel that.
And the same reason why like a lot of us got rid of all our games at yard sales and stuff. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
It happens.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. But yeah, there it is, number 4.
Very cool.
Very cool. Love it. All right. My next one, my number 4, is volume 103. And it is Diddy Kong Racing right on the cover in whatever ice place this is. I forget which one. Whizpig flying behind him. Ryan, I had to have some Diddy Kong Racing on my list.
I did.
But what is remarkable at this one, aside from the large Diddy Kong Racing spread, we get to see all the different items, which again, that's one of the coolest things I love. Just going over the mechanics of the game, having huge pictures of all the characters. But we get our first look at, or the first 100 shots of Zelda 64. And
that's right.
These are some rough images by what we now know as Ocarina of Time. but it was still so cool to see, like, okay, this is what Zelda is going to look like in 3D on the N64. And I don't think any of us were ready for it, but it looks pretty similar. I mean, there's definitely some differences in texture, and like the shield itself does not look at all as to what we know now. Looks more like a mirror shield, honestly. And it's very grainy in some of the larger spreads that are in the background. Link's face is very grainy. But yeah, there's just a whole bunch, 100 of these screenshots of the game, kind of just detailing riding horses and swinging swords and such.
Very cool.
But yeah, I think we were all hungry at this point to see what awaited us on the N64 and the Legend of Zelda.
I have I saw these pictures. I have a memory of seeing these pictures, but it wasn't in a Nintendo Power. I had a computer class in middle school, and I used to spend my time going to videogames.com because that was a place. I think it ended up becoming GameSpot, actually. But I remember when these screenshots were released and they had them on the website, and looking at them when I probably should have been working on whatever the project was at the time, but just trying to like figure out what was happening in the pictures, because, you know, I wasn't used to gaming in the 3D space, and it showed the reticle for things like Z targeting. And I just remember thinking, like, what is that thing on the screen? Like, what are those 4 yellow triangles like around that guy? What does that do? And all these questions, you know, and trying to figure out what the game was all about. And yeah, it's a magical time, man. It's a good pick for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Videogames.com redirects to Giant Bomb.
Giant Bomb now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I feel like the lineage there might have been videogames.com, GameSpot, Jeff Gersman, and then taking that over to Giant Bomb. One other cool thing is in the classified information, which is, you know, the tips and tricks of each volume. GoldenEye 007, mixing and matching weapons. They say that there's a couple of variations on how to get it, but actually getting different types of weapons together, because the game made it so you could only do 2 of the same unless you're pretty sneaky about cycling through your guns. So
the RCP-90 and the grenade launcher.
Great option. That one was available, I think, through Xenia, right? If you killed her, she was the one that did give you some mixing and matching there.
On the top.
That's it.
Very good, man. Good pick. So this is number 4, right?
Yep.
My number 4 is the final issue of Nintendo Power. It is just really, really bittersweet. It's not something I received in the mail. It's something I saw after its release. I was kind of tone deaf to Nintendo Power at the time, and it was sad that I lost interest in the publication that once meant so much to me. So seeing that it was coming to an end was like really disappointing.
Well, it felt like it was something that was just going to continue forever because it's a Nintendo thing, right?
Right, exactly. And yeah, you had the poster with every single Nintendo Power cover as the poster in the issue. And it's because Nintendo Power was a huge part of my childhood. And much like you, Stephan, I reached that age where I became too cool and I kind of never looked back. And then I hear it's ending after 24 years. And yeah, it was tough. And, you know, it included highlights from the entire run as one of the articles, staff from the past and present sharing their memories with the publication. It was really a cool issue. But yeah, I didn't get it at release and didn't get any of the ones leading up to it. And it made me kind of feel like maybe I should have done my part to keep Nintendo Power in circulation.
I think it was more the internet that did that.
Yeah.
That issue also, they brought back the Adventures of Nestor for one last go.
Oh, wow.
Final appearance.
Bill Mudron is the artist of that.
Yeah,
he's on Twitter. Also, I'll mention that that cover was sculpted by Leslie Levings, who is also on Twitter, and she is a professional sculptor. Wouldn't you know? And cool. So you can totally buy her art. So you should do that. Go buy her art.
Leslie
Levings, Levings.
Very cool.
Sweet.
Don't ask me if I have that cover. We're working on it.
Nice.
Do you have the original one?
There's things to figure out. No, but you want to hear a sad story about that cover?
Does it not exist anymore?
Because I know exactly what happened to that cover.
Oh no.
So that cover, the issue 1 cover, for anyone who doesn't know, was made out of oil clay, because it was sculpted by a Will Vinton artist, the Will Vinton Studios of California Raisins fame.
Oh yeah.
So they did a lot of the stop motion stuff, and oil clay, stop motion clay, really doesn't dry ever. It just kind of gets gross, but it stays somewhat pliable forever. So it was in a fish tank in Gail Tilden's office, that's how they were displaying it. And Gail Tilden, of course, being the executive editor of the magazine, editor-in-chief, the original editor-in-chief of the magazine. And you know how anyone who's had a corporate job knows that occasionally they'll have like a moving company come in and move your office over the weekend, and you come in and your stuff is just in a different room or across the street in the new building or whatever. And that happened. And during that move, the movers dropped the fish tank.
No.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the cover one sculpture no longer exists.
Wow.
Oh, that hurts.
That is very sad.
Yeah.
Joan Gantz, the artist, by the way, of that issue, is an Oscar winner now. She is an Oscar-winning director, I believe. So,
wow. Very impressive.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So you bring me on and I just fill it.
I love it though.
That's exactly
what
we want.
This is not the thing is, this is not nonsense. Like we're so honored to have you on, no joke. And also just your knowledge of all of this stuff blows my mind. It would have been Brian and I talking about, yeah, this issue is cool because it has cool pictures. But you're like, here's where the cool pictures came from. Right. Yeah. It's very, very great.
Are.
Yeah. Right. Incredible insight, man. Seriously.
Cool. My turn. Issue 3.
Yes, sir.
Number 3. This is the May-June 1989 issue. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh yeah.
Dan McGowan, who I mentioned earlier, by the way, no longer with us, passed away in 2015 of cancer. But this is the first issue that he ever did a cover for. I love this cover because it is both practical and physically drawn. So the turtles are drawn by hand, but then if you look closely, that wall is actually a physical sculpture. So it's just shot in front of a physical sculpture, which they did a lot of, like the Ninja Gaiden cover, for instance, with the guy in the Halloween costume in front of the painting. But yeah, so this was the first Dan McGowan painting. Also, there's a lot of firsts in this issue, and the reason why I really kind of chose it as being super important. First published work of J. Scott Campbell, the very famous comic artist. He won a contest for a game design in this particular issue, and so his first published work is in here. But also, lesser known, Matt Bozon, the creator of Shantae, is also published in this issue in the letters column. So he has envelope art in this. And
wow.
He was very young. I don't, under 10 when he did this. But also what I love about this issue is this was happens to be, and this is just icing on the cake, this happens to be before they really started hiring American artists to do a whole lot, except for the covers, which were a completely different agency. But they were still using mostly Japanese artists. So the quality of the work is just, page for page in here is just incredible.
Nice. So you seem to really appreciate video game art. What do you think of Simon Bisley's work on like Weapon Lord, and he did some heavy metal? I'm just curious.
He also did a lot of turtle stuff, and
right.
So full disclosure, since you didn't know, Kevin Eastman was the best man at my wedding.
What? My gosh.
We are friends, and so by extension, I know Simon. This is sort of not well, but at one point I did. You know what? I love his work. Of course it's over the top. Of course it's ridiculous.
Oh, it's so good though.
But like, and his he doesn't really, the very note light, right? Like where he doesn't really particularly want to know what the subject is. He's just gonna like draw whatever he wants.
He's gonna make a medal.
Yeah. Body count, that the series he did for Turtles was like one of the I think it held the record for like flying eyeballs or something. Some weird record for gore for a while. But yeah, I mean, I think Simon Bisley's work is great.
So I grew up reading Eastman layered turtles because my mom bought them for me, not knowing that they were more adult themed than anything. I definitely did not share that information with her. So that is incredible that Kevin Eastman was the best man at your wedding. That's really, really something else.
Yeah, we've known each other for a number of years. That was
awesome.
Like, we were good friends anyway, but that was just I kind of try to live my life by the adage of you never know what you can get till you ask. And it was where were we? Bob's Big Boy in Burbank. And I was like, just kind of casually like expecting him to say no, because why? Like, okay, like, because he wasn't like I had to clear this through my best friend. I'm like, look, I have the opportunity to have Kevin be my best man. Would you be cool?
Right?
Like, it'd be really great. Like, I know
you set this one up.
Like, it'd be really cool, dude. Thanks, Elliot. And he was like, yeah, dude. Like, I totally get that. But yeah, it was just one of those like throwaway, like, hey, would you like want to be the best man at my wedding? And he looked at me, he was just like, yeah, sure, why not?
Turtle power.
That's like great.
Wow.
Awesome. Rad.
Man. Wild.
Yeah. Incredible. So did you read The Last Ronin?
Have not yet.
Yeah. It's good.
No.
It's good stuff. Pretty good stuff. Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm very excited for him having found, because he got, I mean, not to disparage Peter too much, but like the way that went down wasn't my favorite, as far as like how he lost his rights to or how he sold off his rights to Turtles. And like there being some like promises that were made around that that were not necessarily honored. And so just to see him now to be able to like actually have found honestly probably more of a following than he did originally. Now with the Turtles again, and like what started as a just sort of a like, yeah, let's get Kevin Eastman to say he likes this new show so that like we can like rubber stamp this, and like, yeah, sure, we got street cred, to like him actually being like an IDW employee, and like then like really, really drawing comics again, not just like umpteen million variant covers. Like he's really doing what he loves. And I think having a little bit of distance from it and not necessarily needing to be like the decision maker on everything has been really good for him, and I'm really happy for him.
Sweet. Yeah, I don't know.
That was really weird segue, so I apologize for that.
No, not at all. No, it's all good. This is great. Well, like, how many people have Kevin Eastman as their best man, Stephan? It's like, Jesus, dude.
Ryan, I thought you were going to tie in your Weapon Lord looking out for the art.
Yeah, I love Simon Bisley's work. I actually asked him to come on, but he's a very busy man, and I respect his time. And he left the door open, so maybe someday.
That's right.
I'm speaking of Weapon Lord. I did some decent hunting from an opportunity I didn't know that I had available to me, but I was looking at various covers, trying to see what I could hunt for, and noticed that that Weapon Lord was made by VC, and which is a 2K studio, which happens to be the studio that I work for. And I was looking at through the instruction manual and at the artist names, and sure enough, a couple of them are still here. Wow. So I was literally able to slack a couple of these guys.
That is so cool.
Unfortunately, they didn't, have a pulse on where the art is now. But maybe it'll show up at the studio someday. But that'd be cool.
Be very cool,
because Simon didn't do the interior, like the character designs and stuff.
Right.
Like he didn't do that stuff. So.
Right. Yeah, I asked. I think the question I had posed to him is if we could use the font for like a shirt idea, because my obsession with Weapon Lord is probably pretty well known to our listeners at this point. And he said that Namco owns the rights. Well, I guess 2K owns the rights. So
maybe. Sometimes like image rights are weird. Like since we're talking about Nintendo Power, I'll give you a Nintendo Power example. For instance, I'm staring right now at the Magical Quest cover, which we'll talk about later on my list. But that is a image in which Nintendo owns the rights to publication, but they don't own the rights to those characters.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to do anything with that art, how would I do that? It's not only is it owned by two different companies, but two of the most litigious companies on the planet.
Right.
And so image rights can get weird, especially when it's, again, it's one one company owning the reproduction rights and then another one owning the actual rights to the characters. It's
right.
Sticky. That's honestly, that's why like I almost once a week at least I get asked when the art book is coming, right? And I would love to do an art book. It will likely never happen because just the rights conversations would be I would die before I got through all that. So the only thing, if I could ever actually get Nintendo on board, maybe, but they're also like they're such a big company at this point that they don't have like motivation to do something like that. Like even if like, and I get it, right? Like also, having worked in and around monolithic juggernaut companies my entire career, like I understand, like it's not literally not worth your time. I totally get that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, probably no art book, everybody. I'm sorry.
Right.
Go see the live exhibit.
That's right.
Yeah. I think I saw people asking you when the expo is going to come to like the East Coast, and you were like, it's a lot to lug all this around.
Yeah, it's one of those things where so I'm in Southern California, and even though I like to say we when I reference my nonprofit because it makes me sound fancy, spoiler alert, it's pretty much just me, and sometimes some volunteers, and certainly when I am I can't entrust anyone else like with the art. Like I couldn't just be like, hey, could you just like drive this to Pennsylvania for me?
Right.
And it's less about me being concerned about the art, but where I am concerned about the art if something were to happen in transit, but more so, I don't ever want to be in a position where something happens to a piece and I have to blame anyone but myself, because like I can't even imagine how that conversation would go, especially when it's like some of these pieces are either high value or completely priceless.
Sure.
And so it's just like, okay, you owe me what? Like, like I can't, I don't know how those conversations would go. So I try not to put myself in those situations.
Yeah.
Totally. So really, I have a day job. This is not my, I have my career and I have my life for work, and I do one so I can do the other. Right. And so if at some point in my life through some life event, like I win the lottery or I get super well funded by a wealthy benefactor, because we are a 501c3, so if you want to donate, or if I retire, like that's something that I foresee, like when I retire from my day job and have some sort of fixed income, that I could then do that. I could drive out to Pennsylvania on a whim, but when you're talking about an East Coast show and that's 3 days travel there and back, because I have to drive it, I cannot fly it. Right. 3 days travel there and back, plus a weekend show, so 3 days there, so 9 days. That's a lot to tie up when you are also working in an 80-hour plus sometimes job.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean about entrusting someone else. I would hate to be the guy who dropped the fish tank,
Yeah.
Jeez.
On that. I mean, that would be crushing, soul crushing.
I mean, that's why one of the reasons, other than like theft, because that's also obviously a concern, but like the reason why I won't show anything unless it's framed. I will not take anything to a show that isn't framed. And I have several hundred pieces that still need to be framed, but it's incredibly expensive. But, once it's in a frame, like the likelihood, I don't frame in glass. I always frame in acrylic and wood frames. So there's not like, so if you did drop one of my frames, the likelihood that it would do anything to the art, slim to none. Right. So from a safety perspective, because sometimes I do have volunteers, and like sometimes they do kick an easel over, like it happens. But I just don't want to be in a position where like there's a risk to them damaging that art.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But if I do it, it's fine. Like literally, like, honestly, because here's the thing. I know, I'm sorry, I'm taking this off track, but
no, you're good.
I have resigned myself to the fact that that sharing this art is the thing, right? That's the thing. And so if in service to the thing, something happens to a piece of art, so be it. I digitally archive everything, right? Everything is safe from that perspective. And so, but it is worth it. Like I do have friends, and collect how you want. I don't care. Right. but I have a mission, and my mission is to share this art. I have friends who literally lock all their art away in a pitch black closet so that zero light hits them, right? But like, I would rather share something for 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, and then have something happen to it, and then me say, well, hey, like, I got this out to the people for 10 years. I got this out to the people for 20 years. I am not overly concerned about like light sources fading my art, because I take all the precautions I can. I frame in museum grade plexi. Yes, some amount of UV does still get to the art, but if I get 2 to 5% color degradation in the process of sharing that art with the people for 50 fucking years, I don't care. I literally don't care.
Yeah.
So that's
doing the Lord's work.
Well, thank you, but that's why like I said, if something happens when it's me, fine, so be it. I'm doing it in service to the thing.
Yeah.
So I get very animated when I talk about this.
No, man, you're passionate about it, and that comes across when you talk about it. It's very good. I agree with your point of view. I mean, to be frank, I definitely agree that like art is there to be seen by people. It's to be enjoyed.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I came across your Twitter, just like seeing a post somewhere, maybe Twitter, maybe Reddit, and just like, wow, like I remember that. That's so cool that this thing exists. Yeah. And we got to have you on the show.
It is really funny too that like the nostalgia, because like the wow factor from the magazine, that art, like it's completely detached from, the more I show it, the more I realize this. It's completely detached from any nostalgia for the actual games or the contents. Like the magazine holds a specific nostalgia of, laying on on a sleeping bed while you're or a sleeping bag while you're camping, flipping through it when you're 9, or like again pulling it out of the mailbox for the first time. Like there's like the Darkwing Duck cover, for instance, is probably one of my, like, as far as like covers that people really like gravitate to and talk about a lot and like give me positive feedback. That cover has made a grown man cry at a convention, right? But like the game, it's fine. It's fine. Like the TurboGrafx one is garbage, but the NES one it's fine. But like no one is like, oh my God, Darkwing Duck was my favorite game ever. It has more to do with honestly like the show. If anyone it melts down over anything, but yeah, it's the nostalgia for the magazine is like a separate thing in and of itself, and it's really interesting because I just don't know that. I don't know that many other publications have that gravitas in and of itself versus like whatever the publication is about. Like, right. It's really fascinating.
Going through this episode and our magazine covers, I can assure you that no other publication had the effect Nintendo Power had on me. Going through all the different magazines, it was like more about the game, like you said, than the magazine itself.
Even if you go to like LinkedIn and you look at like developer profiles, the number of times that someone actually lists on their LinkedIn, like, oh, my game was featured in Nintendo Power. Like that carried them through into their adulthood, or like, it's like throughout their whole career. That's the thing they're proud of.
That's cool.
More than actually shipping the game. Right.
Wild.
So, all right, Brian, let's get dangerous.
Well, I don't know. What are we talking about?
Speaking of which, not a particularly fond of the game, but the cover of the magazine, everything else in there, volume 74, we're talking about Donkey Kong Land for the Game Boy, which I probably dabbled in. Donkey Kong Country is the game that meant way more to me. Donkey Kong Land was just a poor imitation of that. They basically did it, but it wasn't what I was looking for exactly. But the main thing in here, and on the cover, it kind of teases it, Epic Center, which was already one of my favorite kind of things in any of these magazines. That's where they talked about all the different RPGs. But we are going over Chrono Trigger, and this, to my knowledge, was one of the first time that they showed kind of a big expose on the game.
It is tragic that we never got a cover. Like,
I know.
I don't understand. Yeah. I do not understand how fucking Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt.
Oh, right.
As a cover, and yet Chrono Trigger does not. Do not understand.
Earthworm Jim gets 2 covers, and here we are, no Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
So yeah, Epic Center, we just get a whole thing on Chrono Trigger. We get all that nice big art. And this reads like a novel. I mean, it's mostly words, which was kind of rare for this magazine in my experience. It was just a lot of talking about the game and what you were going to kind of experience here, talking about the past and future, continental drift. So how the continents actually kind of expand over time. Just crazy seeing all this kind of stuff on it, and the game not even being out, and yeah, just this was again what I was looking for. I think I mentioned my brother was the source of most of my early Nintendo powers, and then I picked up the mantle at a certain point, and this was one of those games that he introduced to me and said, "You're not going to be able to beat this game. You are too much of a toddler that you're not going to be able to beat Magus or any major boss in that." So I took that as a challenge, and it became one of my favorite games for sure. So anytime I could see it in one of these magazines was amazing.
Yeah, it's a good pick, man. Not the one I had picked for you. You still haven't talked about that one. I'm starting to think it's not going to come up.
Brian of issues.
Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I don't know this man. Maybe I don't know this man.
I feel like the number one is a big one.
That's true.
So I'll say.
I mean, you don't know either of us, Steph.
That's true.
One last thing coming in next issue, we got a Virtual Boy special, so that was something to look forward to.
Oh yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Was it?
No. Not so sure about that one.
Do we all have experience with the Virtual Boy hands-on?
Yeah, we do. Actually, I have. I don't know if you can see it back there on my there.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
But that is actually that's modded to actually be RGB. So that's actually I can play Virtual Boy on my television.
Wow.
I don't recommend it. Mostly because like you have to, for instance, the tennis game, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to you don't have the depth perception, so you have to just figure out I know how big the ball is when I'm supposed to hit it, and so it's the games that require depth perception as a mechanic. It's not a favorable experience.
I could see that being a problem for sure, for sure. Well, good pick, man. Chrono Trigger, Brian goes hand in hand, man, like peanut butter and jelly. So moving on to my number 3. My number 3 is maybe the best strategy guide of all time, but definitely the most memorable strategy guide from my lifetime. And that is the Super Mario Brothers 3 strategy guide. This was like the pilot and co-pilot issue for my sister and I playing through Super Mario Brothers 3. It had, in the beginning, all the breakdown of the moves and the different power-ups and the different enemies. And I just remember flipping through the different worlds because I did that map thing that you were mentioning earlier, where it was like a shot of the entire level and you could kind of see where everything was in the level. But then, you get the Toad houses where you get the little matching game. Mm-hmm. And I remember, sometimes in the later levels when we get a matching game, vigorously flipping back to the beginning of the guide because they had the screenshots of what I think there were like 8 different possible matching games in the game. So you could kind of guess 2 tiles and you would know which one you had. So it would make you in a way OP, but really as powerful as you had to be in Super Mario Brothers 3 when it came to those later levels. And yeah, it was just a joy to flip through this. There's little pictures of Mario, hand-drawn pictures of Mario sprinkled throughout. And there are all those funny little cartoony scenes where he's, having it out with a few Koopa Troopers or avoiding danger or hiding from a Boo. And they all had to do with the level you were playing with, him in the frog suit swimming around, the different enemies and Big Bertha and all that. And it just did such a good job of being that extra level of engagement that the game was phenomenal. It was unlike anything I had played before up to that point. And to have this magazine as just something to engross me in that world even more and make me feel like I had a bit of an edge as well. And I was able to see all the secrets that were there. It just made Super Mario Brothers 3 so much more enjoyable, I think, because this game was full of secrets. And I feel like if you didn't have a guide pre-internet age, you weren't going to see them all. You just weren't. And this really allowed the opportunity to like fully enjoy the game. And I did, man. Me and my sister played the wheels off this game. And
when you said hiding from Abu, I was like the monkey from Aladdin.
Oh yeah. It's true. A boo. Yeah. Abu.
So they only did a handful of those strategy guide issues, I think, right?
Yeah,
four of them.
It was
okay,
Ninja.
So there's the 4-player one that was like the weird cover
with
the football players on.
Right, I know.
Ninja Gaiden, Mario 3, Final Fantasy.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Final Fantasy almost made my list, by the way. That strategy guide.
That almost made my list over issue 14, but issue 14 was the more memorable one for me.
Honestly, it was mostly because it was like, okay, because they were desperate. Nintendo was desperate to get Westerners playing RPGs, just desperate. And like after like the really big push for Dragon Warrior, I don't know how many people know, but if you were a subscriber at the time, Nintendo shipped a copy of Dragon Warrior to every Nintendo Power subscriber. And so, I mean, they were really trying to get the Western audience to play RPGs. And then with the Final Fantasy guide, it was just like, all right, you know what? F it. We're just going to cram this shit down your throat. And also all the interior art for that was Phil Howe as well, who did the Castlevania painting behind.
Very cool. It is funny. I think they learned their lesson from the Dragon Warrior experience, and it carried with them to today when they don't really do a lot of RPGs.
Well, and even like I feel like Earthbound honestly was like they're like really last. They're like, okay, all right, if this doesn't work, we're you know what, fine. But
it's
like
an American Western RPG.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of did the same thing. Like Star Tropics is sort of like a half step towards that too. Like trying to onboard people with the action adventure genre.
You just got that poster too for Star Tropics.
I did. I was like, what if we do Zelda, but in America?
Right.
Number two.
That's it.
Volume 22, Metal Storm. So this is a very personal pick because not the bestest of episodes or of volumes, but this is literally the first magazine that I picked up. This is like this
wow.
3rd or 4th grade. I borrowed Mitchell Swan's issue. Thank you, Mitchell, wherever you are. And this is literally the first issue of 28, the Mario World issue, right? That's 28.
Yes.
That was my first subscribed issue. That was the first issue that I had that like I actually subscribed to. But 22 was the first issue that I ever held in my hot little hands. Fun story about the Metal Storm robot. The cover is 100% a Gundam kit bash. It's basically a Gundam with the head removed.
That's hilarious.
In fact, there is the only surviving that I could find, the only surviving image of this model is in our archive, and it's a Polaroid of this robot sitting on a table in this pose, but with the head on.
Wow.
And
We have to avoid copyrights. Let's take the head off.
Yeah, but then, which is interesting because is it in the? It's not the poster here, right? The poster in this one is an awesome Battletoads poster.
Oh,
by the way,
sick! Nice. Talk about rare.
Yeah. But hey, let's see what you did. But then also like the interior robot that they used was a different like. It is actually a clay sculpture. Like, so they kit bashed the cover for whatever reason.
Interesting.
And then used an actual clay sculpture for the interior model, which was strange.
Yeah.
I also love it because Metal Storm's a great game. Hard but not unforgiving. Yeah, I really like it a lot. Also, in this in this issue, I don't say episode. In this issue is a physical teardown of both the NES and the Game Boy.
Wow.
At a technical level, which is just like, it blew me away because like the magazine, this was still early enough where they're just like, no, this is like for kids. We're pointed at kids. And yet they do like this really like in-depth teardown of like the Game Boy.
It's got the board and everything.
Yeah. And it's just like, let's talk about the PPU for the NES and just like all this like crazy, like, look, here's a whole breakdown like inside the NES. And it's just like, literally has like here's the difference between a PPU and a CPU, Jimmy.
Yeah, like 8-year-olds love this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, but it was just like, I guess I feel like they went, you know what, like kids can understand more. Like I feel like they gave them a little bit of credit in doing that, right? Like
it's true.
Like so yeah, great, solid issue. My number 2 pick, I actually mentioned offline that number 2 was like the hardest for me to identify, but this made it just again because it was just such a personal pick for me.
And it has 2 2s in the volume, so
that's right.
Hey, it was meant to be. Mitchell Swan, you may not know what you started.
That's right.
Right.
I mean, I had never thought of that. He really is like the progenitor of like everything that I do today.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Because that I don't know if it's this particular issue, but like close to that too was like when I decided like this was what I wanted to do for a living. Like I've known that I wanted to be in games since I was in 4th grade. And like, who gets to say that? Very few people actually do the thing that they wanted to do when they grew up. Right. So I feel very fortunate for that. And that's 100% like the magazine's fault that I like pursued that passion.
Yeah. The rest of us who had that dream just talk about them now.
We just have podcasts,
right? Hey, this is like, I love doing this though, man, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate the passion. It's like I knew I had to involve myself with video games somehow, so let me just like insert myself into this little corner over here and see what happens.
Yeah.
So you bring up an interesting point, just kind of talking about the teardown of these systems. I feel like Nintendo Power went through a couple of different iterations of its own voice. And I feel like I noticed it growing up with it and subscribing to it. Whenever they changed that logo, it felt like a different monster each time. And I had to kind of relearn like, okay, what am I actually looking at here? And, the voice changed every single time when that happened. So yeah, I feel like, I think I was looking through and there's like 4 different main Nintendo Power logos. Maybe there's one more. But did you find that kind of going through the magazine that this feels like an era and it's very different from this other one?
Yeah, there's a couple events that sort of happened that I also find to your point. Yes, the logo change was definitely like a big milestone for them. Changing the binding also really not even really just the voice necessarily, but like the look and feel of the magazine dramatically changed, like when it went to like side staples and that kind of thing, and then it went back to the perfect binding. But also there was a point in time, and it was around the N64 era, where they moved the entire magazine in-house. And so instead of them using a lot of like Japanese outsourcing, for instance, it was all internal. And it was and that was also sort of when they went to desktop publishing, right? Where instead of having paste ups that were literally, each page was used a glue stick to actually put them together. Where they went into like actual digital production. that changed the flavor of the magazine. Of course, when they started to actually run ads, because the magazine was ad free for a significant bulk of its run, and so it made it obviously feel more commercial when ads showed up. There's been some real tonal shifts over the years, but certainly like every time they changed that logo, it was definitely a herald of change.
Right.
Yeah, it was. So one of the things going back, I know it's your turn, Brian. Going back and looking through these was like, man, you got an incredible amount of magazine back in the day. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, it's no matter what publication you're getting, it's half advertisements.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And sometimes more, depending on the publication. But looking at these early Nintendo Powers, it is meat. It is full of meat and information and pictures, and it really posters. Something else. Yeah.
The other thing that I love about the magazine, I talked to Gail Tilden a lot, the original editor-in-chief. She's a wonderful woman, and we have blessedly become friends. But at least for her tenure there, before she went and started a little thing called Pokemon, she none of the covers were paid. So the games, which is why I questioned Pugsley's scavenger hunt,
right?
Because how did that happen? But I guess it was just a slow month. But they would get together as a committee and say, okay, like what are the top performing games, and like the top performer would get the cover, and then the next top performer would get like, okay, so what are we going to do? Who's going to get the 10-page this issue, right? But it was all done based off of quality of game and popularity. There was never any like monetary guidance.
That's cool
for content, and I honestly I think you feel that.
Absolutely do. Yeah,
definitely. All right, well then, moving on to my number 2, it is Nintendo Power Volume 50. This was the first one that I came across that felt like a significant milestone. I remember getting this one. This was at the point where I was the subscriber, not my brother anymore. And I remember flipping through this one. First you get that cover. This was my top cover of the episode where we were just talking about covers of gaming magazines. But you get a whole spread of all the issues up to that point. So all 50 covers are just beautifully displayed, that you can see them all. And I was just blown away by that. And I want to talk about the contest. Well, first, the Link's Awakening is the big thing that is going on in this. The whole map is there. You can see all the different tiles that are in place, because that was one of the games where you move, tile to tile, like the original Zelda. But the contest, I'm trying to flip through it to that one. We have 5 top prizes for the 50th volume here. You get to choose. It says choose one of your 5 grand prizes. And there's one that's like way better than the rest. So you can either have 50 pounds of quarters. You can have an arcade party of 50 friends. You can have a $500 gift certificate, 5 Game Boys with 5 games, or a game every single week for 50 weeks.
What?
And that feels like the one that you should choose, because that's a lot of money right there. Plus, like 50 games is a lot of games for the system. But yeah, I don't think I entered this contest. I didn't really enter maybe 1 or 2 during the time. But
so 50 pounds of quarters is estimated to be about $1,000.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's a good chunk of change.
Yeah, sure. The $500 gift certificate is not that great.
No,
even at the time.
Take the 50 pounds of quarters.
Exactly.
I wonder if anybody that I talked to remembers like what they chose, because someone had to actually choose the prize.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah, very very cool contest.
Yeah.
So how many people won? Just one winner? And you got to choose between those options?
It looks like, I think one winner. I'm trying to see if it. Yeah.
Usually grand prize is 1.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wild.
And then like
what a choice.
3 to 5.
Can you imagine being a kid and winning the choice? That's what you won, the choice that you have to now make. That's a lot of pressure, man.
I do remember the one that I entered in was for the Zora guitar for Majora's Mask. That was the one I really wanted.
I've been looking for that thing so hard.
Right?
Yeah. I have a couple weird ones like that. You see that N64 snowboard behind me? That's a prize winning thing.
Very cool.
Okay, they had that in Power Supplies too.
They did.
But was it a different one or was it
the same one?
Okay, gotcha.
It's the same one. There's a couple of things that were just like early on, especially like the like I have a remote control car that was just like a retail remote control car. That was a prize, but honestly, the hard prizes, which shouldn't be because they give 50 of them out every issue, but the t-shirts are really difficult to find, and I'm like, I don't understand like why that is, because there should be a shitload of them.
Right.
Everyone
wore them to the end.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to mention before we moved on about this is that that cover is a Dan McGowan cover, and here is a Xerox copy of it.
Wow. Brian, that was Brian's number one, I think.
Yep.
Right?
Without the gold. That's it.
Oh, nice.
And that so there's two covers in Dan McGowan's work that in his portfolio that is still held on to by the family, because as I said, he passed away, and his nephew owns this cover, loves it so much he has it tattooed on his body.
Wow.
So ethics are definitely involved in what I do, and so when you tell me that this piece that was drawn by your dead relative that you have tattooed on your body, I'm not going to try to get that from you.
Yeah, definitely. No, I understand that. That's incredible artwork, though.
But fortunately, he did, have a portfolio that he put together, so I was able to grab this from his portfolio.
Yeah, it's a really nice copy. So milestones are great, Brian. Milestones are great, and issue 50 is a huge milestone. But it's a bigger milestone. Volume 100 is a bigger milestone. Probably not for the cover, Stephan, because it is once again one of those CG covers.
But even if it wasn't, it's still not a great cover. Like it's
definitely, it's like Mario busting out of the number 100. Yeah. But what kind of list podcast would we be if I didn't include this issue? Because it has the 100 best cheat codes, the top 100 games of all time as named by the editors at Nintendo Power. It also has a piece on Zelda 64, because as Brian mentioned earlier in the episode, that is what it was named at this point, and also Conker's Quest, which is what that game was called before its large overhaul.
Right.
It's a really, really cool issue.
You're forgetting the 100 killer ambushes for GoldenEye.
Right, but that's like...
They were riding the GoldenEye wave for several issues.
Rightfully so. But yeah, monumental issue. I really like the lists and seeing what the best games were. Number one was Mario 64. Of
course.
As it would be during that time frame.
This is my surprise face.
Yeah, number two, Link to the Past, though. Link to the Past was number two. So
wasn't Tetris up there too?
I think Tetris is... So it's not a game people would include on their like best games of all time list. But Tetris is undoubtedly one of the best games of all time, in my opinion. Like, it's never going to make anybody's list because it's not that flashy pick and it's not the experience that people get from other games. But man, Tetris is a marvel and deserves to be high up on anyone's list. But yeah, that's my pick for number two, issue 100.
Nice,
big monumental issue.
Nice. Issue 1, huh? All right. First of all, just for clarity, it's not issue 1.
Okay.
Because I felt like that was like low hanging fruit. I also felt like it's just like, of course, it's an important issue. Like, so it's like I tried to do something so that we didn't all have like number 1. I don't know. That was my scared thing was that like we would all have number 1 as our list, our number 1. So, but the actual best issue of Nintendo Power ever.
Oh wow.
Is volume 44, which is a bonus issue, Mickey's Magical Quest. First of all, it's gigantic. Let me just put like any other issue next to it. Like you can just like see how much.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Yeah.
It's enormous. Also a Dan McGowan cover. I also happen to have it. It's over there.
There it is.
Oh, nice. So before you get started, Stephan, I did want to ask: Are you a big fan of Mickey? Because you worked on 2 Mickey games, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I was with Disney for 9 years.
I know. I saw that.
I have a large swath of Disney titles under my belt. I mostly worked on Disney Channel properties. So, I've done like 9 SKUs of Hannah Montana. But yeah, I worked on Epic Mickey 1 and 2.
Very cool.
Nice.
Both, really ranged from really good to at least innovative, like like either genuinely good and succeeding at what they were trying to do at, or like not necessarily succeeding at what they were trying to do at, but at least they're trying.
Yeah, they're well regarded games.
Yeah, sure. I don't know that I would really consider myself a Mickey fan, only that it was shoved down my throat for 9 years. But I do love this cover. One special thing about this cover is it is a fold out cover. They don't do, I'm not sure they ever did another one, honestly. But it is a double wide cover.
Firefighter Mickey.
Yes. Let me pull up my list because there's just like so much that's awesome about this issue. The Star Fox papercraft. There's like an R-wing papercraft in this thing that is that you can put together yourself.
Wow.
There is SNES controller stickers for actually and NES. These are like controller stickers. And Game Boy too. Upside down.
Hey, that's cool.
There's just so much content. Also amazing is the robot design contest for Mega Man. Was it 4 or 5? Where they allowed kids to design their own Mega Man robot and like, remember this?
Oh wow!
Actually, the guy that did the eyeball there on that page is on Twitter. He's very proud of it. Nice. But yeah, so like that was again, I think I've alluded to before that I really like issues that do a lot of like user generated content, and so I love that. Also, like a pull out Mario Paint thing. Like there's just like this issue just goes forever on just how amazing and how much content and just I mean the contest is kind of weak. It's like a hockey contest. So I guess if you like hockey, it's fine. You can go see the San Jose Sharks.
Hey, during that time they were the new team on the block.
Fine. But yeah, between all the Mega Man coverage in this and Crash Test Dummies. Now I'm just looking through it. There's an issue of the Mario comic. I also just happens to this issue is the issue that I own the most art out of. I have all of the Magical Quest interior art for this. Wow. I have the cover. I have a lot of the Mega Man art from this, not the user art, but there's a lot of Mega Man coverage in here as well that I have art for. So by far I have my very, very difficult to attain dream is to eventually have an issue where I own all of the art for it. And despite the fact that this is the largest issue that they ever did for the magazine, I think, or maybe, I think they did a Zelda issue that was way later. That was
there was that Ocarina of Time one was really big.
I think it was really big, but anyway, I'm probably the closest to having all of the art up from this issue.
Nice. So why'd they make it so big? It's issue 44.
It's the yearly bonus issue.
Okay.
Bonus issue. Right. So like also, what else was the bonus issue? The Mega Man X issue with the silver cover and the Pogs.
Right.
Yeah. And there was a Melee one where you got the music, right, for Melee.
Yeah. So this was a bonus issue. And also these are the issues going back to Brian's earlier point about like when the magazine changed. This was usually end of year or beginning of year. And so this was like the bonus issues were often like when they were going to like change sections or change, different editorials and that kind of thing.
Sure.
The big change came in these issues.
Man, cool. I would have never known issue 44 was
by far the best issue of Nintendo.
Nice. I mean, those stickers alone are
right.
Prime stuff, man. Yeah.
You too could have an R-Wing floating.
Right. Like, that's incredible stuff. Definitely.
Yeah, and it's like on cardstock. It's really nice.
Wow. Yeah.
And a great game to boot. I love
how
that
do you
game.
how do you stop yourself from putting that together? I'd be like, oh, I want to do this paper.
You have more than one copy of this.
Oh, there you go.
Because I also whenever I frame something, I have all the Jetsons art from this too. Wow. I generally frame art with the pages because it's like it cuts down on having to explain things. Right. Because oftentimes no one can really wrap their head around easily that like, oh, this is the actual art that I'm looking at, and it survived 30 years. And so people think that they're prints, or people think that they're posters of some kind, or or that I painted everything. I get a lot of people who think that I painted all of this.
Quite a talent.
Yeah, that's right. Especially when I would have been like in third grade.
Right.
So yeah, I tend to frame everything with the actual published image. So I have, probably to the chagrin of many people listening to this right now, I have destroyed a vast number of issues, because I can never get again, this is all about sharing. Sharing is the thing. And so I can never get the fidelity from like a photocopy, for instance, or a printer of an image as I can from like actually just pulling the page out of the magazine.
Right.
So I have butchered a number. I never throw anything away, if that makes anybody feel any better. I have a box of donors. But yeah, so. Yeah.
Well, I could let you know my address for those donors later on. If that's all right. No, I'm kidding.
If you want like 3/4 of a bunch of magazines, that's
no. I may be purchasing them on my own. That's really cool. Plus, you're pulling that page for the greater good. I mean,
that's right.
Right.
Speaking of that, I saw in one of these issues as I was looking through, you could get issues 1 through 50 for $50 at one time, which is wild to think about right now.
Yeah.
There are a lot of the people who are into like CGC grading, because CGC do graded comic books. I have one over there just out of reach, but that particular like order, like people are seeking those out because they were like printed later, so they were in better shape. But also, a lot of them just sat in a box together. But not honestly, because the covers on these were printed on garbage using garbage ink. Like it was really like, especially the earlier issues of Nintendo Power, like you can get like, how you handle newsprint and like comes off on your fingers. That shit happens with Nintendo Powers.
Wow.
The earlier covers will actually just like rub off in your hands. And so they'd get this box of 50 comics, right? And just the jostling from life, just like whatever, it's sitting in a box somewhere getting jostled by the rotation of the earth, it causes cover rub. And so like even these magazines that haven't been touched in 30 years are not in pristine condition because they've been rubbing on each other.
Wow.
So it's actually devastatingly difficult, especially like the first, like I'd say 12 issues or so, devastatingly difficult to get high grade copies of Nintendo Powers. It's just like anything over a 9 is just like ridiculous, and even approaching anything close to a 9 is ridiculously difficult.
Wow.
Yeah, makes sense though. CGC is my neck of the woods. Actually, they're right like a few miles from my house. They're only like 15 miles from where I live. Yeah,
taking some Nintendo Powers.
I should.
Cool. All right. Well, we're at my number 1. Is that right?
You're number 1. Okay. And I don't think the volume that I had pegged for you is going to make it.
I don't think so either, because this is one that's already been said, and it is Ryan, number 100. That was the one for me.
Whoa.
Terrible cover.
Yeah.
But I spent so much time going through that list of 100 games just over and over again. Of course, we get our Banjo-Kazooie, and it's using the old logo for Banjo-Kazooie that was not used for the game. They kind of go over different aspects of it. So this was definitely a preview of the game. Ken Griffey Jr. We just talked about him.
Ken Griffey Jr. baseball, man.
And then, Conqueror's Quest. This was one of the times that, I was a fan of Rare, was looking forward to Conqueror's game, and I was counting on Nintendo Power to lead me through to release. And then they inexplicably stopped talking about it. And then I see it on the shelf and reach for it and denied sale.
Yeah, that's right.
Of my age.
That's right.
So that was, Nintendo Power just they were leading me down this path, and I was so excited, and I got let down there, but that's just history. So again, we get all the different covers. It's not laid out as well as
it's on a poster, I think, right? I mean,
it's hard to tell. So I'm looking at a scan of it, but I think it might be just by the shape of the pages here.
I know the 50th issue it was a poster.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they're kind of crammed in here, kind of overlapping each other. They had to get, double the amount, so a little bit more difficult. But it is cool seeing these GoldenEye top-down views of the levels. I thought that was pretty cool. Lots of different codes. We have done an episode on our top 10 cheats or codes or whatnot. So it was cool to see that there. But yeah, overall,
it's got the list.
It's the list, and that to your point, Ryan, we are a list-based podcast. I had to have this as my number one for sure.
Damn right.
Yep. Volume 100.
I have a question about lists for you guys and Nintendo Power.
Sure.
Did it occur to you as children? Because I don't think it occurred to me as a child. I guess I shouldn't be leading you. But anyway, did it occur to you as children that the lists in Nintendo Power might be skewed by the fact that the magazine was made by the console manufacturer?
Maybe not as a kid, but definitely something that... So you say they didn't have any paid content for covers and things like that, right?
Correct.
There had to be some precedent set. Like, you cannot speak badly about any Nintendo game. And, that's apparent now as an adult, but as a kid, I
feel like there was some degree of like letting you down easy for games that were not necessarily of high quality, but even then it wasn't like, this is garbage, don't buy it. Like, I'm sure the words "do not buy this" never appeared in the magazine.
I'm positive of that as well. But I do think it seemed right at the time. Looking back, Mario 64 being number one's kind of like, oh man, like, I love Mario 64. I mean, people who would listen to the show know that, but it's definitely not a better game than some other games on that list. So yeah, looking back, it's like, okay, this was a little skewed probably for sales at that time or whatever it might be, but I don't think it stood out at all. I was like, heck yeah, Mario 64 rules,
right?
With a Z on there, because it was the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, even the reviews though, I remember seeing some like 1-star reviews. It was not a Nintendo game. It was going to be some third-party game that was on a Nintendo console.
Sure.
But yeah, definitely anything Mario, Zelda related had to have a 4 or 5 next to it, or a 9 or a 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're good games too. So the issue I thought you would pick for somewhere on your list, Brian, was volume 66. It has Donkey Kong Country on the cover, Killer Instinct in it, Earthworm Jim's in it. It's like total Brian fanfare.
That is, Final Fantasy 3. I did have that on my short list here, but that one did not make it.
Man, who are you, really?
I know.
It's like I don't even know you. But so, Brian, moving on to my number one, it's the memories we made along the way.
No, because you can't cop out.
I'm not copping out, but my number one is issue 148. With the Brian artwork. I'm serious about this. My boy right here, I'd put an arm around you if you were here, Brian. He got to achieve a rare childhood dream, and I am damn proud of you, dude. You were published in Nintendo Power. Like,
that's pretty great.
Despite all the names that Stephan listed this episode, it's something not many people have done.
Being published in Nintendo Power is not part of my title list.
Right. I wish I had drawn something more than Sonic Advance, but
it's like,
it is kind of funny that you're published with Sonic.
That's what I said. That's what I said. I think that's
extra great.
Super, like, punk rock, dude. You're like, I'm going to get published in Nintendo Power drawing Sonic the Hedgehog. Right. That's like really rebel. I had to pick it, Brian. Like, how often do I get the chance to do this on our show?
Sweet.
Sometimes I crack jokes at your expense and you take it like a champ, but man, this is incredible. Like something you could hang your hat on.
How much do you look at that as an adult, like, and go like, oh my God, that's like something special? Or is it just
feels pretty cool. I'm talking to Reggie now. I said, hey, I read your book. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here. I'm in the magazine, but yeah, I don't know. That's the one issue I have held on to because again, I had a similar thing of kind of getting rid of them and not being able to bring them move to move. But yeah, it is something I cherish for sure. Love it.
The reason I ask is because even though, it bums me out that I was never published in the thing that I dedicate my life to, Brian.
I should not have brought this up. I apologize.
I did. I have been published a couple times in Game Informer recently.
Oh, nice.
And like that was, for people who don't know, Game Informer is, I think it's like the last widely distributed print magazine for games physically. So like I felt like I got in under the wire, right? So and that was like a really big deal for me.
Yeah, totally.
And I can't imagine what it would be like if that was also Nintendo Power. I'm very sad.
So what was your Game Informer publication?
One of them they did an expose on just like the room behind you, essentially,
nice.
Or the room behind me, essentially. But just like a collector's profile. But then they recently in the Elden Ring issue actually did one of their writers did a very in-depth article about Nintendo gameplay counselors. And for those who don't know, the other thing that I specialize in is Nintendo gameplay counselors. So they used me as a source, and that was really fulfilling too, because that's the other, like one of the other components to my 501c3 that I want to like do more of, and anytime I do get the opportunity to do, I cherish is contributing to research. Right, I definitely don't have the time to do the research myself. Mostly, please see my very scant YouTube channel. But I do love to be able to, like, a researcher will come to me for something and I'm able to provide data for them. And that's really special to me. So it makes me feel like an actual historian.
Yeah.
Oh, I would absolutely call you an actual historian.
Of a pretend
No, you are not a pretend historian. You have quite the collection going, and you're doing a lot for preservation for sure.
Thank you.
And before we go into our debrief, I did want to give you the opportunity to shout out any upcoming projects or anything that you want to draw people's attention to coming up.
Can I have, since I'm the guest, another honorable mention?
Of course.
Yeah.
Cool.
How could we say no to you?
It is a Nintendo publication, but not an issue, like numbered issue of Nintendo Power. It is a strategy guide, and that is the Earthbound strategy guide.
Nice.
That guide, first of all, every model in that magazine is a hand sculpted clay sculpture, and there's like hundreds of them. And people ask like what my holy grail is, and usually say, oh, it's whatever the next thing is that I don't know about, which is true, right? Like when you're hunting for things that you aren't sure exist. The holy grail is like whatever it is that I find tomorrow, right? Like the holy grail yesterday would have been Howard Phillips' desk name, and now I have that, right?
I'm just going to go ahead and delete that question now from our questions at the end.
Okay,
here.
There you go. So, but my if I had to actually pick something, right? Then those maquettes from that strategy guide is it. Like, and because I have this fantasy as well that if one of them still exists, that they probably all exist, and they're probably in a box together. Right. And so like I have this like fantasy where I discover the box and I have all the sculptures from the Earthbound strategy guide. But also not only that, but like the style, like just the sheer like swagger of that strategy guide is intensely cool. Like it's put together like a Froman's travel guide, essentially, if anyone hasn't looked at it in a while, where there's like, check out the pyramids of Egypt, and like, or like whatever, and then they have this like thing on it's like it's not just screenshots and information. Like it's telling you a story that is Earthbound, and it's just like, it's so, and it came with the fucking game. That's cool.
That's amazing. Yeah. And what a game for a strategy guide. It almost needs one. Right. Earthbound almost needs one. Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to get an extra honorable mention because I was thinking about that a lot. But yeah, I can plug some stuff. If you do want to see the physical show, so just a recap, the Interactive Art Collection is a 501c3 nonprofit that focuses on the mostly the original art of the video game industry. I would probably widen that to original art and other like niche historical portions of the game industry. I really love to focus on parts of the industry that aren't widely known or have been easily forgotten, or that kind of thing, which is how I got so into Nintendo gameplay counselors. But so we are a 501c3 nonprofit. The primary thing that we do is we take this vast art collection that I've built, and I share it at conventions mostly, because it's really, a brick and mortar museum is very expensive, and more expensive than I have the funding for, clearly. So until I get some wealthy benefactor that donates me a building, I am a nonprofit. You can totally do that.
So if any of our listeners have a building,
that's right,
please donate it.
You can get a fat tax write-off for donating me a building. But yeah, so we piggyback off of retro game conventions mostly, and we do art exhibits. Normally I have about 40 frames there, but that's not 40 pieces of art. Usually that's around 100 pieces of art, because I frame more than one thing in a frame. And that goes from not just like paintings, but also like I bring the sculptures with me a lot. Like I think you mentioned it in a previous episode, I have one of the Wily ship from Mega Man 2. I have the shoes from the track and field cover. Those are crazy. All the stuff that you would, when you see it, you will go, I don't understand how this still exists. Like, right. That's the stuff that I really love. And I will bring it to a show near you and show it to you. As we said earlier, I am based in Southern California, so most of my shows are in relative driving distance of Southern California. I am doing, as of today, I am doing the Game On convention in Phoenix, Arizona in August. And I'm also going to be doing Portland Retro Gaming Expo this year as well. There's also I live in Simi Valley, California, and there's a local convention in September, I think, that I will also probably be at, just because it's literally no problem for me to go to. The other thing I should plug is I do also have a podcast. I am 1/3 of the Collector's Quest podcast. I'm actually on there a lot less these days because life is demanding, but if you want to really kind of listen to a podcast that drills down on the really nitty gritty aspects of collecting in games, then I highly recommend us there, and you can listen to us wherever pods are casted. I think that's all I want to I can't talk about work projects mostly. Go play The Quarry. That's going to be cool. But yeah, that's what I got to plug.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, I say we go ahead and take this little short break, and then we'll go and get into our debriefs. All right. Well, before we get into our debrief, Stephan, we had a few questions we wanted to ask you.
Go on.
So how did you decide that you wanted to collect Nintendo Power Art? What was there one specific moment?
Yeah, so there was a journey to this. So I forever had a shoebox collection of video games, right? Like that. It was I feel like I would have gotten into collecting game stuff earlier had I not also been in the game industry, because it's just much like, honestly, this happens with artists too. There's a certain amount of this is a thing that I made. How can there be any value to it? Right. Maybe that's imposter syndrome to a certain extent. But so I didn't think to, which now breaks my heart, because the amount of prototypes and unreleased whatever that passed over my desk in the last 20 years is heartbreaking as a collector, knowing I just threw all that shit in the trash. But so honestly, it started, and we're going to get to know each other real quick, right? It started when my wife at the time got diagnosed with cancer. And I was trying to find something to sort of distract myself from that. And I mentioned Kevin Eastman being heavily involved in my life, and that was largely in part to the fact that before I collected all of this stuff, I was a very big toy collector, namely Ninja Turtles. And I had gotten to my definition of done for toy collecting, where like I literally had everything Playmates ever released ever. This is before IDW, so I had literally every variant of every single comic that was ever published for Ninja Turtles. Like I legit had everything. And so I got to this definition of done where, and I don't know, everyone collects differently, but for me, as soon as I hit that, that collection stopped being something like living and breathing that I was like feeding and growing. And it was just this like weight around my neck. It was just this like, I would like sit in the collection room and go, okay, this is a thing I did. And so, it's just a lot of like existential quandaries around it. Like, does this collection define me? Like, what would I be if I got rid of it? So like around that same time, my wife got sick. And so I had this piggy bank essentially of a toy collection that I didn't really care about anymore. And I was looking for something else to do. And so, I was one of those kids that always had that like thing in the back of my head of just like, oh, I wonder what it would be like if I owned every video game. And I was like, all right, well, let's start that quest. And so originally I was a set collector. And I did 12 North American sets before I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And that was all the big ones like NES and my Super Nintendo set is still right here. My statues are guarding it. And actually that's a North American 3DO set back there. If you ever wanted 3DO, it's cool. So I did 12 North American sets. It was around 10,000-ish games. And then I was like, you know what? I am enjoying collecting this stuff more than I am anything else. And I'm enjoying the hunt more than anything else. And I kind of got to the point where I realized that collecting video games is not difficult. It's just expensive.
Yes.
And it was, at least at the time, and this was before like the sealed graded craze and stuff. And some of that is in sealed graded condition is magnitudes more rare of, than like a CIB copy. But by and large, if I wanted something and I could afford it, I could go out and I could find it immediately. Right. So I was like, well, I really am enjoying the hunt more than anything else. So I was sitting around, I was like, what's harder to find? And so then I started getting into displays, and you can clearly see behind me that I did fairly well with that.
Yes, you did.
And I have all the fiber optic signs and all the posters I wanted, and I obviously didn't get everything, but then I got to the point where it's like, okay, I kind of have everything that I want, right? That I don't want to spend $10,000 on, and so then I was like, okay, so what's harder? And then I started thinking about, so I actually happened to be flipping through a issue of Nintendo Power 1. And on the inside cover of Nintendo Power 1, the first thing you see is an ad for the power line, the gameplay counselor power line. Mm-hmm. And there are these kids who were not gameplay counselors. They were actors, but they were dressed as gameplay counselors, and they were wearing these gray jackets. And I was like, I wonder if those jackets exist. And so that was literally my thought. And I was like, I'm going to go find out. And sure enough, they did exist. And I now have all those counselor jackets.
Wow.
But then in that was a lot of reaching out to former Nintendo employees. That was basically what I was doing all day, every day. And meanwhile, my wife was getting sicker and sicker. And spoiler alert, she's no longer with us. But she was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So I was having more and more time on my hands. And not that I was ignoring her. Don't anybody think that. But I just had time. And so I was dedicating all this time to finding Nintendo employees and gameplay counselors. And I would go, hey, first it was like, hey, do you have your jacket? But then a lot of times it was like, well, I don't have this thing you're looking for, but I have all this other stuff. Or one thing that I caught on too quickly that was a boon is that, how if anybody's ever worked a corporate job, on your last day of your corporate job, you take a box and you put all the shit that's on your desk in that box. And then that box probably goes in your garage and you don't think about it for 30 years.
Right.
Until Stephan Reese comes along and goes, hey, do you have that box? And so I started asking specifically for the box that they packed up their desk into on the last day. And sure enough, a lot of them did. So I started getting these boxes of just like random shit. And like some of it was like half off coupons to local restaurants that don't exist anymore, but that the gameplay counselors exhibited, visited, or like, but sometimes it was an Earthbound ruler, which if anybody who doesn't know, that's like an $800 ruler.
Wow.
And that's actually how I did in Portland 2019. I ended up creating an exhibit for the gameplay counselors that was a recreation of the desk of a gameplay counselor using 100% gameplay counselor used items. So television, phone, consoles.
Somebody get games. This man a building.
So
I need a museum.
I recreated a gameplay counselor's desk circa 1994.
Wow, that's cool.
But I was able to make it look so much more lived in and so much more authentic because I had the boxes of random shit. And so that was really fulfilling. But so I was looking for, so during this process, I was also finding, like trophies and 20-year statues and all sorts of certificates. I have like somebody's 401k paperwork from Nintendo,
wow.
Just like all sorts of like weird shit.
I have all their social security numbers.
yeah. So then in the process of that, it was literally just happened by chance to where, again, I was like, okay, I have a lot of this stuff. Like, so what's next? Like, I still do the gameplay counselor stuff. That's still something that I'm very passionate about. But I was like, then also now looking for something else to do. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, so what's harder? What could possibly be harder? And I was talking to a gameplay counselor, and he goes, well, I don't have any of my counselor stuff. But once I left gameplay counseling, I went and I drew art for Nintendo Power Magazine. Would you be interested in that? And my mind, like in a very like comical, like animated GIF way, like expanded into infinity. And it was just like, it had never occurred to me, much like I think, how like a kid it never occurs to a kid that there's a voice actor behind their favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
It never occurred to me that A, somebody had to draw all this art, and that B, that art might still be out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh my God, this is like something that no one's really paying attention to. In fact, I had like 200 pieces of art before anyone knew I had one, right? Like no one was talking about it, even in like the art circles. And everything I find is one of one. It was like,
wow,
the promised land. Like for me, someone who was like looking for something that was genuinely difficult, to say that almost everything that I'm looking for is one of one. That was my promised land. And then it really, like, from there was only one more step. It's like, okay, well, like, this is the most difficult thing to do. I don't know where else I could go from here. So then what do I do with that?
Right.
And that's where the nonprofit came from. That's where the museum exhibits came from, where it was just like, okay, well, this is the end game. The end game is to now share everything that I've done. And that's the story.
Yeah. Wow. First, I want to say my condolences.
No, thank you.
And also, man, with that, did you run into anybody else who was collecting this sort of thing? Have you run into other collectors and were able to make acquisitions from them? Or were you just like the first person to think of this? Because honestly, until Brian shared what you do with me, it didn't occur to me either. And I'm like, I'm a 40-year-old man. And then it was like, wait a minute, this artwork exists. It's real.
There are a couple other, a total of 3 other people that I can think of off the top of my head that have Nintendo Power art and had it before I did. There was one gentleman who had like a stack of like 20 or 30 images that are, spoiler alert, now part of this collection. But there are also 2 collectors who collect mainly cover art for video games. But typically as an art collector, when you find an artist who has art, you just buy it all. Like whatever it is they have, you just make a bulk deal. If obviously that sounds very well-to-do of me, but generally, if you have the budget, buy it all. It will work out for you. right? It will work in your favor. And then even if it's something that you don't want, like, I've had artists who were like did other commercial art, like Herbal Essence tea boxes or like whatever, like someone's going to want it, right? And so like being able to like use that for trade bait, for instance, like that's important too. So there are a couple other people off the top of my head I can think of that have a couple Nintendo Power covers that I don't have. But that was generally that they found someone who also was doing box art for the games, and that happened to be in there.
Right.
But as far as like somebody's like seeking out specifically magazine art, and I'm not doing this to like toot my own horn. I genuinely think I'm the first one who did it. Yeah. Just because, and part of it was like looking at the art market going like, oh man, this space is like so saturated. All these pieces are so expensive. Like, what aren't people looking at?
Right.
And
this is such a growing industry, and that nostalgia is just more and more present for people of our generation. So yeah, you really hit the nail at the right time on
right.
I mean, not to mix my metaphors here, but yeah, really couldn't have happened at a better time, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it could have happened sooner. It always could have happened sooner, because like I have this thing in the back of my head, and sometimes it is true. I have run into artists who have thrown things away, or have or just have misplaced them, or like or even like especially production items, not necessarily art, but like Wendy Salvatore, wonderful woman, did the paste ups for almost every page of the first 75 issues, a lot of pages of the magazine. She had them all. Every single paste up, which again is like when they were doing a page of the magazine, they would literally paste it together by hand with a glue stick and an X-Acto knife and photograph that page. And that's how you got your page. She had all of the paste ups for every page she had ever done. At some point, several years before I met her, she showed them to her children. They're like, yeah, that's great, Mom. We don't really fucking care. And then, and she recycled them all.
Wow.
So I have this thing in my head that grinds in me every day, every moment of the day, going, hey, Stephan, every moment you're not finding something, it's getting thrown in the trash.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
So you should probably find it.
I'll try to get some sleep. Yeah. How do you even find sleep?
It is
point?
A gnarly brain weasel.
Yeah,
for sure.
Ooh, absolutely.
Yeah. But that's why also it's just that this particular thing takes up all of my time, because it needs to. I wish, I hope, I want there to be a Stephan Reese of EGM. I want there to be a Stephan Reese of GamePro. And if someone else wants to be that person, I will help them, but it can't be me. It cannot be me. For many reasons. And so, but yeah, I hope someone else picks up the torch for other magazine publications. That'd be great.
Yeah. So are you going to be a collector of things now in anticipation of them becoming like collector's items in the future? Is that something you've ever thought about, or you're mainly focused on this specific venture?
Like, I don't go looking for like displays or like modern like employee awards or like modern Nintendo stuff, mostly because essentially if someone who's currently working for Nintendo, they will not talk to you.
Right.
Because that's a big no. You have to wait. In fact, I have a couple people on my list that are like kind of elder statesmen of the company that like still work there, that I'm just like, every once in a while, I'll just take a look at their LinkedIn and be like, hey, have you left the company?
Right.
Like, they're on my list. I will call them the day they retire. But I can't touch them now. So really, it would be almost more difficult trying to hunt modern historical items, and plus it's just not the space that I really want to be in. Like, I love the physical, tangible thing, and like. Yeah. And so much of this now is digital that it's just like, and I have some of that, and honestly, it's even more difficult to find than physical art, because of course no one's going to have something that they did 5 hard drives ago, right? Like that, it just doesn't last. And so I have like the Video Game History Foundation is another 501c nonprofit. Frank and Kelsey run it, and they're great, and they're an incredible resource for the industry. But they happened to have some like digital layouts that they got from someone, and they gifted those to me. But that was just like a fluke. Like I can't imagine trying to like archive digital assets. Then they do a lot of that over there. Yeah, so no thanks. This keeps me busy enough. Plus, it's like one of those things where it's like, if it's not 100% in my wheelhouse, me wanting to spend money on a thing is like, that's a big ask, because because there's just again a voice in my head saying like, hey, if you spend $500 on this thing that you kind of like I almost that poster that I just got, I almost didn't buy it because it's like, it's a poster, man. That's not really in your wheelhouse, right? And I'm like, but I really like it. But it was one of those things where it's like, hey, if you spend this $600 on this poster, and something else comes along, then you're not going to have that $600.
That's
Right.
You know. And so it hasn't happened yet, thank God, where like I wasn't able to like to pull the trigger on something when I really needed to. But I'm sure at some point it'll happen, like where it's just like, oh, I'm just tapped for resource, and yeah, that's my nightmare scenario.
Yeah, exactly. So I did want to ask you too, how did we do on our list? I mean, you're like the pro, you're the source. If you want to give us like a Nintendo Power rating, you can. But overall, what do you think? Did we?
I thought this list was better. I thought your last list was bad.
That was my second part of this question.
Yeah,
you actually messaged and said we were wrong, I believe.
Yeah, I don't off the top of my head, I don't remember what it was, but like I remember there being some choices I didn't agree with.
Well, obviously not considering Nintendo Power. If there's another one you want to shout out, what would have been some of your favorite magazine covers?
You know what? I think there's a lot, just because like, I hate to say this, but like, because they're not that great, there's a lot of like fantastic Game Pro covers where it's just like done in like colored pencil and like totally off model, and just like honestly, that's sort of the art that I love, the stuff that I love the most. Yes, there's like a certain, like the very clean, very on model, very like professional looking art. There's certainly something to be said about that. But like, I have like a spy versus spy piece that was done in crayon, and like somehow that made it into the magazine. That's the stuff that I think is really interesting, because it's like, I loved, or like how they would have multiple artists working on the same page, so the art direction would just be a hot mess. And but like, the thing I loved about Nintendo Power is that especially the earlier issues, it felt like a magazine that me and my friends could have made. And so, I do like sort of the more low fidelity art, and there was a lot of it in Game Pro.
Right. I mean, even Nintendo Power though. Look at issue 1. Look at Mario in issue 1. Like, who's that guy on the cover? It's definitely not Super Mario. So not to take too hard a shift, but talking about your other side, your professional job. Do you have any advice for anybody who does want to get into game development or some aspect of it?
It's so different now, right? Like, so I've been in the industry, actually, as of next month will be 19 years.
Wow.
My first game was Fairly Odd Parents for the original Xbox.
Banger of a title. No, I've never played it.
It's not bad. I played it on stream not too long
ago. Good
ago.
Property.
Nice.
It's back then, like, publisher QA was a really easy way to get in. Like, most like major publishers would have like hundreds. Like, when I was at Disney Interactive, we had almost 400 testers at one point. And it was a seasonal job, but it was a way to like get your face in front of people who like could actually like QA was like a breeding ground for production, like that were, like kind of sort of like a grooming pen, right? People would get like hired into production from quality assurance. And like, but now QA, and I'm not disparaging any of my friends who do still do publisher QA, or any of my friends who do, or in other countries who do, or who are part of like QA houses now, but like a lot of it is outsourced, and a lot of it is like, career QA houses, right? We do quality assurance, and that's what we do. And so like there's so much less opportunity now to go through quality assurance as a kind of a vector in, because it really was like the mailroom of the game industry when I grew up. Now, having said that, though, the other thing that is kind of a boon if you do want to get into actual like making games is it's so easy to self-publish now. You can just like put something on Steam. Ta-da! I have a game, right? And like, you know, we would have killed for that when we were growing up in the industry. So like, it's so vastly different than when like I did it. But like, that's really, I mean, it's gonna sound stupid and cliche, but like, just make games. Like, you know, if you don't have any, just find someone out there. I mean, yes, there's also like the education route. There's a select number of schools that are decent that actually, you know, people do get hired in from, like Full Sail or Digipen is probably still the most prestigious game school, I think. Nintendo hires directly out of Digipen. For a while, at least, Digipen was actually on the Nintendo campus. So yeah, there's definitely like scholastic resources if you want to go that route. But yeah, I mean, if you're sitting there going like, I want to make games, I don't know what to do, you know, I have no experience, then just like, I would just find other like-minded people who are like around, or hell, maybe you find someone who's super talented that wants to help you out. Like, but just kind of put yourself out there, find a group of people who want to make a game and just go make a game.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. I wish I had more like contemporary direct advice, but like, again, it's been, the game industry has changed so much in the last 20 years that like it's difficult for me to be like, oh no, this is the way I did it and you should do this.
No, definitely. I completely understand that. Brian, do you have anything else?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get into our debrief, but Stephan, man, thank you so much for all your insight into Nintendo Power and video games as a whole.
Sure. This is great.
Do you have anything you'd want to recommend to our listeners?
Oh, okay. Yeah. People who haven't seen it or saw the first episode and like balked. I have really, really been enjoying the Halo show.
Wow. It's the first person I've heard enjoying it. This is good.
Yeah, I didn't think I would. And so maybe part of it is that I'm not like a diehard Halo guy. Like I'm a casual Halo guy. Like I played all the games, right? Sure. But I'm not like thinking about Master Chief when I'm not playing Halo. And there certainly were some story concessions that I won't go into because of spoilers, but like you will get, I mean, they happen in the first episode. Basically, there's like a very big creative choice that they make that I think maybe the diehard people wouldn't necessarily have made. But now that we're into the kind of twilight of the series, I think it's like on episode 8 or 9 right now. I think all the bets that they made paid off, and I'm having a really good time with that show.
Oh, that's cool.
Also, Strange New Worlds, the new Star Trek, is that what it's called? There's like,
is that the animated one? Or
no, but it's like they basically went back to like episodic, like Creature of the Week sort of format.
Oh, cool.
And it's with the guy that played Pike on Discovery. I don't know if you watched Discovery. But so it follows the captain of the Enterprise before Kirk, and it's very, very Creature of the Week. Like they still have like character arcs, but not like story arcs where Discovery is like super, super serialized, right? It's like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and it's like it's like a cohesive through line,
right?
There's not that. It's honestly, they're going back to more of like a Strange New Worlds feels very much like Next Generation.
That's cool. Yeah, everything nice and neat and wrapped up, and
So those are my two show recommendations.
Cool.
Yeah, I might have to check out Halo.
I started Halo and was liking it, but I think I want it to be all done, and then I'll decide if I want to go through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I get like a 30-day trial with Game Pass, and I'm kind of waiting until all the episodes are out so I could get them all in.
Do it all.
Yeah.
Paramount Plus, I will say, is probably like, as far as like value, like if you like the properties they do, like for instance, if you like Star Trek, like there's always new Star Trek. Like the way that they pace their content right now, I'm super impressed by. Like it's just like there's always something new that I like. Like it's not just like, oh, let's go watch like the one Marvel show that's airing on Disney Plus.
Right.
It's like, hey, we are simultaneously airing 3 new Star Trek shows. So I hope you like Star Trek.
Oh, that's cool.
But
it's busy.
It's honestly, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, Disney Plus does a decent job of staggering their like Marvel, Star Wars, and getting them about a month apart. But it is, it's a drip feed for sure.
Yeah.
Thought about that off the top of my head. Did a good job.
You did.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, we haven't even talked about the Halo show. So that's good to finally hear something about it. So I mentioned I finally finished Reggie's book, Disrupting the Game. Great book. Highly recommend it.
My dog ate it. Could you see that on my Twitter? I'm still reading it, but my dog actually ate it.
Oh my gosh.
I have a 5-month-old Great Dane who eats everything.
Oh, geez.
And she's amazing, but she eats everything, including Reggie's book.
Well, so I got the audiobook, and his sweet baritone voice was so nice that entire ride. So no danger of it getting eaten there. But what I am doing, there's the Summer Games Fest is happening in lieu of E3, I guess you could say. And Jeff Keighley announced that they're going to be doing it in IMAX, just different ones around the nation. So this will be the first time I am re-entering a movie theater since Ryan and I watched Star Wars
episode 9
in theaters. But yeah, I'm going with a buddy, and we're going to watch whatever 2-hour commercial series of trailers Jeff Keighley's got drumming up for us. But I'm excited. It's been a while since I've seen this friend, so that'll be fun. And I think the energy of a bunch of gamers sitting in an IMAX, looking through their goodie bags, whatever they give us, I think that'll be a fun time.
Yeah. So if you have the opportunity, I guess.
Yeah. So tickets are still available from what I was looking at. I mean, they're going here and there, but look to see if your IMAX is doing it before the June 9th release here.
I wish I could have joined you, man.
I know. It would have been good.
Would have been cool for sure.
Yeah. What do you got, Ryan?
So my debrief is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Can I highly recommend this film to you? No, no, I cannot. I thought it was about mid-tier as far as MCU movies go, but it did some things extremely well, like better than other MCU movies. It had a good horror tone, I thought. And a lot of Raimi is in this movie. So if you're familiar with Sam Raimi, it actually resembled a lot of his earlier work on like The Evil Dead than it did his run with Spider-Man, which I thought was interesting because it is a superhero movie. But yeah, I would definitely think it's worth everybody's time to go see it. It's brutal. It's gruesome. And it's kind of shocking for a Marvel movie, but I think it's divisive. I'm kind of the middle ground on it, but I think people should go make their own decision and see it for themselves for sure.
Am I allowed to talk about it? Because I have also seen it.
Do you want to see, or should we have a spoiler warning? Is that what you mean?
No.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. You could talk about it.
I did feel like, to your point, that I was getting like punched in the face by Sam Raimi, like to the point where like I felt like that was pulling me out. Right.
Absolutely.
There were these moments that was like, it was so like, and not just like, obviously there's like cameos and stuff, but just but specifically like just the way that something is shot, or like a very clear callback, or just like the way that a character is modeled, I was just like, it was like the Sam Raimi version of a 3D movie where they're just like, look at this thing in 3D. It was like literally like, this is a Sam Raimi movie. And like, I don't know, that was not.
Well, that's what I mean. And I think if you could honestly watch those early early Evil Dead movies and enjoy them and not laugh at how campy they get sometimes, then maybe but it was such a tonal shift in this film. Like the film is a serious movie, and then it has those like Raimi goofiness parts that are very in your face and over the top, and it does take you out of the film. Absolutely. It goes against the tone he sets, but he did stuff like that in his earlier movies. It is It's a lot, though. It's
a
lot.
That, like tonally shifting. I mean, it has certainly worked out for them. I mean, look at the Thor franchise, for instance. Like after Dark World, they took such a sharp turn,
right? Well,
with just like tonally.
Right. That's two separate movies. I mean, for this to be one movie, it does a good job of like.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Building fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will immediately remove that fear by doing something ridiculously campy, like a body comedy gag instead of like a good quippy Marvel line, you know? Yeah.
So you're saying I can wait until Disney Plus for this one?
I guess that's what I'm saying. Not quite the debrief, not really a I guess it's a recommendation, right? Yeah. But how would you wrap that up, Stephan?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely you can wait.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say before we go, Stephan, and last chance, any shouts, anything you want to bring people's attention to? I know I asked you earlier, but if something has popped in your head since then, now's the time.
No, I got the events that I'm doing right now. That's and again, that's the Game On Expo in August in Phoenix, and then the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in September, October, something. Later, just go look at their website. They have all that stuff. I didn't even know that was going to happen until they're just like, surprise, we're back. So that was cool. But yeah, literally all I do is work and then come home and work on this. So like I said, there's my profession and there's my life's work, and I do one so that I can do the other.
And what is that Twitter handle one more time?
Oh, it's Art of NP. But you can just Google Art of Nintendo Power and find me all of the places, because I'm on Instagram and YouTube, etc. But like I've made myself intentionally very findable.
Sure.
If you search for Nintendo Power Art on Google, I will sort higher than Nintendo does.
Wow, nice.
So that's not an accident.
No, that's very cool.
Because sometimes, I am now enjoying sort of the fruits of my labor, having like really kind of focused on that kind of SEO for a long time, where things do find me now because someone will have something that they are trying to figure out what to do with, and they'll go like, I have a piece of Nintendo Power Art.
Oh, that makes things easier, right? They find you.
And here I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you just Google Art of Nintendo Power, I will be all over the place.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks again, Stephan. It's been a blast, man. Sure. And Brian, thank you as always for joining me as well. Next week we will be doing our mission debrief, and we will be talking about, or our mission report, and we will be talking about. Every month we do an episode where we pick a topic around gaming to discuss. It kind of breaks up the list based, once a month to offer something else, and we get to share our opinions on something. And the topic we'll be sharing our opinions on this week is game delays and how prevalent they seem to be lately. But we have a lot more than that to say.
I'm simultaneously happy and unhappy that I'm not going to be here for that, because as someone who is delaying games as a profession, I have particular POVs that I do and don't want to share with you.
Right? So join us next week again with Stephan Reese. But as always, guys, we appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.